I wanted to make it clear that we weren't going to play a taffy intro for this one.
You know what it is? We did have one, but I said Aaron may show this video to his family or friends or stuff like that. So we want to make sure we present Aaron in the best light possible. So we're going to start off our show just doing our ad read, and then we're going to bring Aaron
on. Yeah, okay. Not used to being professional like this. I don't like it.
And I'm not used to you starting the show off. It threw me completely off kilter.
I know. I'm not a fan of this one bit. Anyways, let's get into the ad read for because of you, Ant, I hate saying their name now because you always make fun of me for saying requisite.
It's perfect. Just keep saying it the way you do, Rob. Just stick with it.
Okay. Let me pull up this new little teleprompter feature we got here. Try to make this professional. Anyway, so for any of you who don't know, we're sponsored by Requisite Sellers. So the moral pillars of our society have rotten away. If we hope to rebuild anything from this barbarism, we need to keep Christ at the center of our efforts. At Requisite Sellers, they want to draw more attention to the glorious feast of Christ the King. So they are hosting a sale for the entire month of October. You can get 20% off all their red wines with code BASED, BASED. Go to requisitesellers.com. That's RECUSANT sellers.com. Don't put up stuff on the screen because that distracts me. And use code BASE for 20% off. Celebrate the feast.
Go to REKWITZ sellers.com. We are the worst. We are the absolute worst for sponsors. And we just but real quick, Black Monk Rosaries is going to take a sponsorship with us as well. I hope they're prepared for what we do here because Requisite Sellers, they are amazing. You guys have 2 weeks left to get your 20% off. They are an awesome Catholic family. We love supporting them. If you guys like the show, go support Requisite Sellers. They deliver to most states. Go check them out. Requisite Sellers, use code BASE for 20% off at checkout. Now, Rob, kick it into the intro that you're going to use, and then we'll get Aaron on.
Okay, so we are going to introduce Aaron by stealing from Frad and Keith Nestor, which only feels right. So
perfect.
A good friend of mine, very anti-Catholic at one point in time, he told me before when I first became Catholic, he said, we need to talk about this. And it was not going to be good. I could tell he was very upset with me. Very theologically minded person. He just says, I need to understand you better. I need to understand what you believe better. I don't think that I really truly know why you did what you did. So help me to understand.
What a humble question.
It was completely humble. He opened that door. And so what I didn't want to do is go, all right, let me give you the, 9 arguments or whatever, this or whatever that. I just thought you need to understand what the church is from the church. Let's get you a copy of the Catechism and just read it. He said, okay. And then here's what he did. He said, I made a chart. He read every paragraph of the Catechism. And for the paragraphs that he agreed with, as a 5-point Calvinist Reformed guy, he said every paragraph I gave either basically like a star, an X, or a check mark. And the check mark was, I agree with this. The X was, I don't agree with this. And the star was, I need to find out more information.
Okay.
So he started going through this process, which led him.
He read the whole Catechism?
He read the whole Catechism. We went to dinner at his house maybe a month after I gave him that challenge. And we're sitting around talking about the Lord. He goes, hold on a minute. And he holds up the Catechism and he just goes, this is beautiful. And then he set it down. He goes, okay, never mind. I just needed to tell you that. And I just thought, this is it. He's going to be Catholic. Over the course of many months, he began with that chart. And then what he would do is he would research those areas where he wanted more information. We met a few months later, maybe it was a year later, and he sat down with me and he says, I need to show you my chart. Pulls the chart out and he throws it down and he's got it all sorted by the date. And he's like, here's all the stuff. And then he goes, but then I read this book and I had to talk with this priest. So then, we moved these over to that category and we went through this thing. And then this date, we went through this for like 2 or 3 minutes. And then finally he pulls it off the table and he says, and now here's where I am today. And he threw a blank piece of paper down. He says, these are my objections. Oh, he's becoming Catholic.
Wow.
And I've seen what he's had to go through for this. One other quick story on this. It just happened. It's another one of my friends.
All right. Well, I guess we don't need Aaron on. Keith just told the whole conversion story.
Yeah, I guess we're done.
All right. Never mind, guys. I'll bring him on. You do it. All right. Aaron Gorn, how are you, brother?
Good. Thank you for having me. Good night, everyone. That's the story. That's it right there.
Right before the show started, I'm trying to think. I'm like, when was my first interaction with Keith? And I had seen Keith on YouTube, and I think I prayed the rosary on one of his one of his rosary things. I just sat and prayed the rosary with him in his stream one night, and then we had like a brief interaction on Twitter, and I think he was kind of shocked that I liked him. like I think people have this.
Oh, no. We're all shocked that he liked you.
That yes, but I think he assumed like I was like a hardcore trad, and I'm like, nah, well, I'm not really like that, Keith. So we had a quick interaction on Twitter, and then we got Keith on the show, and we've hit it off. And I talk to Keith weekly, like I at least once a week. We're on the phone talking with each other and stuff. But how do you know Keith?
Oh boy, it goes back. So technically, my wife knew Keith long before I did. They went to church camp together, and I don't know. They might have been in. Well, my wife might have been in junior high. I don't know, maybe elementary. There's this picture. There's this picture Keith has of them. There's this big bell on a big frame at this church camp, and Keith's climbed way up to the top, and my wife is down at the bottom. They both look like they're about 6 years old. But at one point when I had dropped out of college for a time and came home, a mutual friend got a hold of Keith to come and try to put a band together. And so that got going, and because I knew this mutual friend, all of this stuff, Keith was the drummer. I kind of was just the tag along guy. And so Keith can correct anything if he's in the chat there, but that's as I ran. So that goes back to either 92 or 93. Okay. And so he stood up he was a groomsman in my wedding. And so I don't know.
So you guys, all right. So now
33 years or something like that.
You're like Jimmy Buffett, and he's like 80s hair metal. How does that work?
No, so that's it. I don't know. It's not. I said, well, this is interesting. It's probably not. But just yesterday, Ace Frehley passed away. And my first concert was Kiss when I was 8 years old, 1979. So that's my musical pedigree, is kind of rock, metal, classic rock and stuff like that. We were both Metallica fans. Keith liked a lot more hardcore stuff than I did. He introduced me to, I don't think I've ever introduced Keith to anything. He knows so much more about bands than I do. But I don't like everything he likes, and he certainly doesn't like everything I like. But we do have the Venn diagram has a good crossover.
And you both got into ministry as well.
Yes. It was kind of my plan. I think back then, going that far back, it really wasn't his plan. If you ever heard his story about how he became a pastor, he wasn't looking for it. It found him.
So Keith, even when he came on our show, the first time he was on with us, he's just got preaching in his DNA. Like even when he tells his conversion story, it just amps you up. You just like you end up on fire for Christ every time you.
Don't tell him I said this. Do not tell him I said this. But he is far better at that than I am. I was a manuscript and note preacher. That's how I gave sermons. It's how I was trained, but it's also how I was comfortable. It's like he looks at whatever notes he puts together, he looks at them for about 15 minutes, and then he can go out and give an hour-long sermon without even looking at him again. Yeah. That's not me.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So enough of the glazing of Keith Nestor. We all like him. Great.
That's awesome. What we're here for.
Yeah, all right. You got all your shout outs tonight, Keith. We're not going to talk about you anymore. Okay, so why don't you take us back to what like give us like a generic upbringing you had and what led to your original conversion to Jesus Christ in the beginning, and then when the dominoes started to get a little troublesome for you, where you had to figure something out with the church here.
So my early life as a Christian up to just last year. Okay. I grew up in the church. I grew up in the Lutheran church. So if you don't know what that is, just brief description. I grew up with what would be in mainline Protestantism kind of a high liturgy.
So it was like Missouri Synod.
It was not. It was. It is today the ELCA, which but it wasn't called that then. I just don't remember what it was called. But it was that denomination. But high liturgy. The readings, the lectionary, but it would have been the revised standard lectionary.
But they followed the Catholic lectionary, right?
Yes, except the revised part of it. So, they wouldn't have Judith in it or Tobit or wisdom, so it was most, across Protestantism, for those who use the lectionary, they pretty much all use what's called the revised common lectionary, and it's revised from the Catholic lectionary. But yes, the origin of it is the 3-year cycle of the Catholic.
That's what my wife was Lutheran And it looked very much like a Novus Ordo.
Yes.
Like her liturgy looked very much like a typical Novus Ordo you would go to on a Sunday.
There are a lot of common elements. When I first attended a mass, which was just a daily mass with Keith, when I was just, it was academic to me at that point. I was like, wow, a lot of this stuff is really familiar to me. But anyway, so I grew up in the Lutheran church, but nothing really took root. It didn't matter to me. And I probably only went till I was about 15 or 16. And then I just didn't. And I was kind of nothing at that point. I had a generic belief in God, a generic belief in the Christian God. But it wasn't until, so I graduated high school in 89. It was in 92 that I would say I had a pretty dramatic conversion experience and gave my life to Jesus. And I ended up dropping out of college because I had been pretty directionless anyway at that point. And I knew I needed to get my life straightened out, not just in terms of my faith and giving my life to Jesus, but what in the world am I even doing? I basically wasted my life up to that point, and I needed to get reoriented, to the true north of Christ. So I dropped out of college. I moved home and kind of got involved with this mutual friend I was just talking about. And man, things went really fast as I remember it then. He wanted to do a music project. He did that and got that going. That's how Keith got into the mix. I met my wife at the church that I started going to with them. She was actually a senior about to graduate, and we met, and we started dating with the permission of her parents and church leadership, because it was a little bit odd because she was still in high school and I'm 4 years older than she is. At any rate, a lot of things happened right there in that nexus, of that nexus of time and space, where certain people and certain events just really brought me into the church of my own volition now, and very enthusiastically.
Yeah.
And so what I found was when I really kind of gave my life to Christ, I would have said nothing ever stuck from my time as a Lutheran. But as soon as I started reading the scriptures, it was like I was going back over old ground that I've covered before. And it was astonishing how much just came flooding in that was there, but it never took root. So,
that's an interesting thing you're saying, because for like, because I complain about like my lack of catechesis growing up, but it was, once I started getting into it, it was like, oh yeah, that's what like all of the ritual you do in the liturgy does have meaning. And then when you start learning about this stuff, it kind of clicks for you and you're like, oh, that's what that was.
Yeah, it wasn't at all like I had to start from square one. It was all there. It just needed to be kind of ignited, I suppose ignited by the Holy Spirit. And it was. So of course, all the, people see that, and I'm retaining a lot of scripture. I'm digesting, I'm devouring scripture. And of course, the comments that, well, you should be a pastor. This feedback starts coming in, because if you're very much into the scripture, then obviously you need to be a pastor. And I don't say that to denigrate that, that advice, but it seems like that's just the one path. It's like, if you're going to know scripture, then you have to be a pastor. And I've come to the point where I don't think that's necessarily wise, but in my case, it's what I wanted to do. And, but that was a long haul to get to that point. Probably not terribly relevant for this, but suffice to say, the path from me determining or deciding that really is what I would like to do, to the point where I actually became a pastor, was very convoluted. This church, that church, Cammie had to go to college. I had to finish college, and it was just kind of roundabout, and it took time before it got to that point.
So about how old are you when you actually get into a place of leadership at a church?
Well, a place of leadership in the church, I first served as a deacon. So that would be an officer, local officers, elders and deacons. And I was a deacon probably 2005, something like that.
And this is in the ELCA? You went
No. By now I'm reformed. By that point, I've encountered a few different people who have moved me from where I was to now being reformed.
Who are those people? Who did you come across?
Well,
if you had just let him continue the story, he would have
gotta
gotten
pick at
there.
things. I can't help myself. I want to know like
This
who
is-
some of them are.
It's a-okay. It's a-okay. This isn't even live, Rob. It's just us talking.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but okay, so I had bounced around. I had been, I'd gone to a Baptist church. I'd gone to a quasi-Mennonite church, probably something else. If I remember, I was kind of maybe stereotypical Protestant, but I was finding my way a little bit too, because I was learning so much, and different people were having an influence in my life. But it was when I was in college it was when I was back in college, probably about 93. A Reformed Baptist pastor and I struck up a relationship, and he's the one who introduced me to Reformed theology. And through him, it was R.C. Sproul who became my guy.
The reason I asked that is because I know this is your conversion story, and I've told this on air, but like my original conversion or reversion had to do with me listening to Protestant preaching on the radio and listening to them. I bought an R.C. Sproul book on the book of Romans, and it like sent my mind for a loop. I was like it was just kind of wild. It eventually led to me being Catholic, but I'm sorry.
He'd be pleased to know that. So I actually met him once in St. Louis, but that's beside the point. So that started a trajectory theologically for me, where now it's no longer just, am I going to be a pastor? It's, I know that I want to be a Reformed pastor. And eventually, through kind of a roundabout, again, no paths for me were straight, but I ended up being asked to serve as an interim pastor in a Dutch Reformed denomination. It's the same denomination that John Bergsma used to be in. And so I went there. I was supposed to serve a year as an interim pastor. Theirs had just stepped down. They didn't want to go an extended time without some sort of stability there. So I had been serving in leadership at another church anyway, and that same mutual friend that I mentioned before was there, and he kind of introduced me to people. They offered me the job for a year, interim pastor. But 3 months into that year, the search committee came to the leaders and said, if Aaron's interested, we think he's our guy. And I was interested. And so that started a conversation, which also led to, a more permanent calling, or a more official calling. It also led to me taking seminary classes at the same time. So I was in seminary while I was a pastor, kind of doing both things, and eventually graduated from a Reformed seminary with an MDiv.
So this is what, 2005?
I started in 2009 at the church and I was at the same church as a pastor the whole time, 15 years at one church. And that started late in 2009, and it ended my last day was the last day of 2024.
Wow, that's crazy. Okay, so now you're there as a pastor, and you do what? So
I did nothing.
No, you did like 16 years there, right? Like
15, like you 15. Just said.
Yeah. From 09 to 24. Yeah. So 15 years.
15 plus a couple of months. Yes.
When does was Keith's conversion the thing that triggers you looking into the Catholic Church, or were there other things along the way that started doing that?
Keith's conversion was the thing that triggered me wanting to wring his neck. Actually, it goes back before that. Again, he was looking at the Catholic Church a while before he converted. And so as I remember it, I hate to tell this knowing that he's in the chat, because we remember this differently. But I remember that we were at some event where we were playing. So we ended up playing like praise band stuff too at different churches and different Christian events around the area. And as I remember it, we were at a school, and they were having several churches had put something on together, and we were almost ready to go on. Like the band was about ready to go on and do the opening praise songs and stuff. And he mentioned to me that he'd been talking to a friend that he'd met, and that he was considering becoming Catholic. And I am I am deep in my cage stage of Reformed theology right now. And I should explain that. The cage stage is this: when you go from anything else to being Reformed, you become rabid. You become, and it becomes something that you club people over the head with to try to get them to believe what you believe, and you maybe just figured it out, but you can't believe, it took me 10 years, but you can't believe that they're not believing it right now.
It's like the sedevacantism of the Protestant world.
Yeah, you become really dangerous and really destructive, and you need to be locked in a cage for at least a year. That's the cage stage. So, but I was well into that, and boy, I laid into him about that, and justification by faith alone, and I don't even remember all the stuff I said to him, but I'm sure it was quite a tirade. But at any rate, and the singer in our group kind of had to get us to shut up. And and kind of bring us, hey, we got songs to go, we have worship to go lead, and you guys are sitting here arguing in the in the background,
having a theological debate when you have to sing.
Yes, yes. So as I recall, that was my first that was his first salvo about telling me that he was looking at the Catholic Church. But our timelines diverged because he went out to Philly, and eventually came back to Iowa. And so I think he's 2017 is when he converted, and it was nowhere on my radar at all at that time. But he and I, we both had young families. We lived just far enough away from each other that's really outside of the zone of where it's convenient when you've got a bunch of young kids. And so I think that the hostility that I felt subsided. It really wasn't there anymore, but just circumstances kept us from really being a part of each other's lives for a lot of years. So I don't know when that first encounter was at that school that I was talking about, but by the time he converted, I don't remember that he and I were in much contact with each other a whole lot, other than Facebook and stuff like that. So
what starts the dominoes falling for you then? Like what are the first things that start to trigger you and where you're looking at things a little differently?
Well, it started because we kind of got back in touch with each other. And I think I'd seen him on Facebook doing his Rosary Crew stuff, which I was like, what in the world? What has happened to Keith? And so, but I also kind of thought, I kind of miss him. Again, don't tell him I said that. But so I kind of trolled him a little bit. And
you troll someone?
No, never. Anthony, let me explain to you what trolling means. So I watched a few of his videos, and like one of them, so to me, Anthony, I remember you kind of going on a tirade about how Catholic converts can throw out a video on why sola scriptura is a bunch of, and they get a billion hits. And Keith, I think, was the one you were talking about.
That was our first interaction, because Keith put out a video about sola scriptura, and I came on the show like the next day, and I was like, I don't get it. These converts come on and they do a video on this, it gets 80,000 views, and me and Rob are over here slogging it out 2 hours a night, two times a week, and we can't get over 3,000 views. And Keith saw it.
Yeah, so I saw that, which was a little bit later, obviously, but so this is 2023, and after I'd commented on some videos of his, and that's when he was on your channel. I found this out later because actually it was much later than that. Sorry, I'm getting out of the timeline, but we connect. Okay, we talked back and forth and thought, well, let's meet halfway for lunch and just kind of catch up. And so we did that, and which meant about a 45-minute drive for each of us. And it was great. It was a good time catching up. I still was like, I don't understand half the stuff you're talking about and why you would even want to do this. But on my way home, I thought to myself, if we're going to reconnect in this way, which is what I wanted to do, I need to at least understand his world from his point. I need to do the work of being a friend and understanding his world from his perspective. And he had, in one of his videos, had said something like, if you want to know what the Catholic Church believes, and he held one of these up and said, you should read the Catholic Catechism, because that's what's, as opposed to what this person or that person says or whatever like that. And I know a lot of people in the Protestant world, a lot of them that you probably interact with on X, Anthony, is and probably you too, Rob. They're coming from modern evangelicalism or non-denominationalism. So you talk to them about a catechism, and they're just like, "Hey, I got the Bible."
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not my world. Almost everywhere I was ever a part of a church, there was a catechism. And as a pastor, I was bound by confessions, and we had the creeds. It might interest you. We had the Apostles, the Nicene, and the Athanasian, the same ones,
Mm-hmm.
but we had the Reformed.
Holy Christian Apostolic Church.
Yeah.
I would say,
Yeah, but we had our Reformed doctrines as well, the confessions that were specifically Reformed. But I've always been bound by other confessions and stuff. So to read a catechism, it's nothing, to me. That wasn't some act of bravery on my part to pick up a catechism. It was just second nature. So I started reading it, and that's what he's talking about in that clip from Pints. And I just started, a few of the details are wrong, but I don't, there's no way you're going to see that. I was circling, for every article, there's an article number.
Yep.
And so I just, to keep track of where are things going with this and how am I processing this, I just started, if I agreed with a particular article, I would circle it, the number. If I wasn't sure, didn't quite understand it, or wasn't sure, I would need to understand terms better. Then I would put a box around the number, a rectangle. And if I flat out was like, yeah, no way, I put a triangle around the number. So that's how I did. And it was all academic. It was all right, challenge accepted. I'll read the Catholic Catechism and try to understand your world a little bit better. So that started probably in May or June of 2023, because we had lunch together on May 4th, 2023. And the only reason I remember that is because that's Star Wars Day, May 4th. So
May the 4th.
So that's why I remember that, because I'm a nerd. If you can't tell from my background, I'm a nerd. So let me
that's
stop.
2023. When did you come across us? Because we've been interacting with you like way before you converted. Like you were still Protestant when you started watching our show and interacting with us and stuff.
Yeah,
I feel like he was maybe in the live chat of our first show with Keith.
Oh, that's possible.
No, I can actually, this part I do kind of remember well. Whenever that was, so by the time Keith was on your show, I had gone to one daily mass with him. I'd come over to Cedar Rapids, and I just wanted to see what a mass looked like. I don't even remember if I'd finished the catechism at that point. I probably hadn't, but still, I'm just kind of this learning. It's like I was giving myself my own college course or whatever on the Catholic Church. And so I came over to his church, and we went to mass. Went to a daily mass. And he introduced me to his priest afterwards. And I can't remember if I went back to his house or whatever, but it was a good time just connecting. And then down the road, this other friend of mine who was and is a pastor, he and I started talking about different things, and it got around to talking about mass and talking about some of the debates, Protestant Catholic debates and stuff like that. And he was talking about how he'd never been to a Latin mass. And I said, well, I've got a friend who goes to one. And in fact, I've thought about going just to see one. I saw a daily mass. I'd kind of like to see a Latin mass. So he and I ended up going to a Latin mass at the Feast of the Assumption. And that's when Keith was on your show. He was telling you about how I was coming over, and he was talking to you about how he thought I was trolling him when I first made contact with him. Like I wanted to try to argue with him again or something, which was a reasonable conclusion on his part, given some of our previous.
Yeah, he was on our show August 10th of 23.
Yeah, so in August 15 was right as in August 15.
Yeah, the Assumption.
So yeah, it was right before that. But I think I found that because I was looking for another video. There's so many threads here. I think I was looking for a video, for a Trent Horn video that I had seen. I couldn't find it. And I think you had been talking about Trent Horner, maybe it was in the title or something like that. That's how I saw your channel. And then
that's why we do those videos, by the way, because we're hoping to get some of his audience. So we'll do something just trolling him a little bit.
Wait, so on August 15th of 2023, on the Feast of the Assumption, we did a show with Trent Horn.
Oh, you did?
So you probably searched for Trent Horn.
That's it. Okay.
And saw our video.
I saw that. Okay. And so that video pops up, but over on the side are the suggested videos, and I see Keith there. I was like, what the heck? So then I watched that, and I saw him talking, and it was like right early on, and you guys started talking about it, and he was talking about this friend of his who was coming over for a Latin Mass with another pastor friend. That was me. That was what was going on there. So yeah, that's August 2023, and I'm still just I'm studying, and I'm enjoying that kind of a thing. But no interest, absolutely zero interest in the Catholic Church, but kind of delighting in the fact that there's so much more in common between where I was and where Keith was than I ever thought imaginable, honestly, because of caricatures, because of, you learn about Catholicism from Reformed people who don't really like Catholicism. It tends to skew your view a little bit, and your knowledge is very limited and selective anyway. But, G.K. Chesterton, in his book, The Catholic Church and Conversion, he talks about the 3 stages of conversion that people who convert to the Catholic Church go through. And the first one is deciding to play fair with the Catholic Church. You just decide to take the Catholic Church at from its own perspective,
Yep.
And the second step is you become you're surprised by the amount of truth that you find present in the Catholic Church, and you're actually a little bit happy about it. It kind of you're
like, oh, these people are Christian.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you're trained to think that we are a pagan entity masquerading as Christian. Yes. So when you start to find out, oh wait, they actually are Christian, it probably softens your heart, and you're like, oh great.
Yeah, for sure. And just to know those points of contact, there's so much there, because especially for, in my case where I've grown up with the creeds anyway, and just to have all that common ground. I mean, how much of the Catechism is an exposition on the creeds?
Right.
So there's so much that's there that's the same, or at least it's close enough. It's very much common ground. And so that's looking back on it, that's probably where I was at the time, but I was not aware of that, in terms of Chesterton's 3 stages. His third stage is where the convert is desperately trying not to convert,
not to become Catholic.
Yeah. And I don't know if I really kind of went through that one that way or not. Another part of my story that it would go on and on and on, but my reality is that in spring of 2021, I was already ready to not be a pastor if God wanted to call me out of it. The events of 2020 and the way I experienced it and everything like that, I was spent. It had taken everything out of me. And, so I kind of had that prayer, kind of had it out with God a little bit in prayer. And, it's like, I'm on an interstate driving at night, and it's foggy and visibility is about 50 feet. And if there's an exit ramp up there somewhere that God wants to show me, I'll take it. And that was in 2021. And then things kind of escalated in different ways. Some of it family, deaths in the family, and a lot of other situations that came on my plate, that a lot of stuff just happened that, there's a lot of things. It takes emotional energy to be able to give yourself to certain things. And I don't know if I should say especially as a pastor, but there are many things you do as a pastor that if you have an empty tank, it starts to ruin you if you have to do certain things, certain tasks.
You see the value in a celibate priesthood, I'm sure.
I do, actually. I've been asked that question a lot. And, about, with the assumption being, yeah, that's crazy to have a celibate priesthood, but I see it in a whole different light now. Yeah. I see the wisdom in it. Because I was torn, and there was a period in there after after my wife's, probably after her dad died in late 2021, that kicked a lot of things into gear, set a lot of things in motion that necessarily involved me getting highly involved in talking to this entity, talking to that entity. And she became the legal guardian of an older sister overnight who has a mental disability. And so you're dealing with the state, you're trying to find information for them that you don't even know exists, and so it just took a lot out of me, not to make it a big sob story. Everybody has lots of problems in life. Life can be very hard, but
to be doing that, dealing with all that, and have to shepherd an entire church and be responsible for the souls of an entire church, that's a very tall order when your heart's not in the right place.
Yeah, and mine wasn't. I was running on empty, to quote an old song, and there were times where I felt like I really had just one parishioner, and it was my wife. And everything that was going on with concerning her family and the things going on there, it took everything I had just to do that, just to tend to the things that I needed to tend to there. And, in retrospect, maybe I should have recognized that better than I did. And maybe I should have had a conversation about resigning long before I did. But, you're near a man, you just want to tough it out. I can do this. You just get through it. And there are certain aspects of being a pastor that, like any job, can get a little, like you could almost do it in your sleep, some of the things, but it's certainly not everything. It's not most things. And so it got really hard. I got to the point where every Sunday when I'd wake up, you're in that fog and you wake up and you're not quite sure what day it is yet. But when I would realize it was Sunday, I would instantly be sick to my stomach.
Man.
All of that. So again, dating that to, it started in 2020. By spring of 2021, I've had that prayer with God. I've had that little wrestling match with God about, I'm ready if you want to show me the exit ramp. But I didn't act on that for a long time. And so, reconnect with Keith 2 years later in 2023, start reading the Catechism. And yeah, he said in that clip, maybe about a year, it's hard for me to remember the timeline, but the thing is, there are layers to this, because all this time, while I'm more and more wanting to find that exit ramp, wanting God to show me that exit ramp, my wife doesn't want anything to do with that. She doesn't, and understandably, my church that I was at, that's our hometown.
Yeah.
We're both from there. And so we know a lot of people there. A lot of the people at that church were our friends before I was the pastor there. So it's tough. There's a lot of connections. There's a lot of dependence in a good way, mutual. The
people
body
feel betrayed.
It's Midwest small town.
Yes.
Right? So
yes. Yeah. And so there's no easy way to think about doing that, especially when it's your job. This is what I trained to do. It's all I ever wanted to do. I was either going to die as the pastor of that church or retire at whatever age, or if at some point they decided they didn't want me anymore, they could tell me it was time to move on. But resigning was never, ever part of the plan, except that it kind of became my plan. If I could see a way out, I was confident that if I tried to resign just because I was tired and couldn't do it anymore, I would screw things up royally. And so I just kept trying to wait on God to show me when and where, that exit ramp was. And yeah, it was a long time. And again, I don't think I did everything as well as I could have,
So how is your wife handling you looking into the Catholic Church? Is there a lot of tension in the home during this period?
Not at first, because this is what I do. I get something that I'm interested in, and then all of a sudden Amazon boxes start showing up at our house and I just read, and it's what I do. And so in one sense, it was no different than anything she'd ever seen. She did start to get nervous the more I was hanging around with Keith. But And she likes Keith. She likes
Yeah.
Keith. So, but you know, she's been through this before. She's been through it. The kind of a joke in our family is if I say we need to talk about something, she's just like, no, not again. No, not again. We went from Methodist to Baptist to this to that to Reformed and said, not again. This is it. But that really wasn't what was going on. But as she sees me reading more, she starts to fear the worst. She feared it before it actually became a thing. But here's kind of where it's hard for me to get back in my mind of that time, because my world was just going off the rails because of all this other stuff that I talked about. I wasn't thinking clearly about anything at that point. But she's very nervous about what's going on. And I probably don't even really know for sure what's going on, other than, one by one, the objections that I see about the Catholic Church are dropping. But in my mind, I already know that the time is coming when I'm going to be trying to figure out where we're going to go to church anyway, because I know my time as a pastor is coming to an end. And so I'm thinking about possibilities, and I know that it's got to be something with a liturgy. I'm not going to go to a lot of churches. There's a lot of churches that weren't possible for us to go to. And I'm looking at this from a view of not just what I want, but what we want. And I can see that the Catholic Church is a non-starter for her. So regardless of what I was thinking, there's the what I was learning theologically and what I might have been inclined toward, as compared to what's actually where can we go where we can be at peace, because I just couldn't envision anything where we're at different churches. That, to me, that wasn't a possibility. Yeah. I suppose if God had said something and it was very clear, but I did not have that indication, and it wasn't my plan. So, 2024 at some point is where, the last dominoes probably fell, but it was earlier in 2024 when I really saw, and I think the leaders really for the first time saw just how frazzled I was. How little
you were in our live chat for almost every one of our shows back then, and we were always making jokes about sure Aaron, you're Protestant, all right. We all knew, we knew as soon as you start looking into it, it's kind of like you're kind of just going, it's anybody who actually does put the time in to study it and look into it, they end up there. So we all kind of knew a year before you had even gone through any of this that you were eventually going to become Catholic. So
yeah, well, as a credit to your show, you've said a lot that you want your show to be a place where people like to come and hang out, and I found that to be true.
That's great.
It was fun to come and hang out. And I wasn't in full agreement with you guys, but again, I was kind of in that phase where it was nice to see that there's actually a fellowship that I can have with Catholics, because I'd been trained for so long that I can't. It's so weird, now on X, it's so weird to see the comments that get put out there, how Catholics don't know their Bible at all. And I read that, and it's like, I see it, and then all of a sudden I realize, oh, wait a minute, that's me. I can work with Hebrew and Greek, and I was a pastor for 15 years, but I don't know my Bible. Huh.
Yeah. Well, so at what point do you get introduced to Scott Hahn? Because every convert has their Scott Hahn moment where they go and they discover the Protestant pastor who explains his conversion through scripture, right? So you had to come across him at some point.
Well, I first came across him in a book, that was my first introduction. And, it's funny. I think Keith gave me his Hahn's conversion video many years ago, and it did nothing for me. I watched it and I was like, I think he gets to a point at the end where he's talking about when he sees the host elevated in mass and just what it did to him. And I'm sitting there watching that going, what is wrong with you? But it was different reading, the book that he and Kimberly wrote together was really, really striking to read that. And so, that hit me very differently at that point. That would have been it for me, reading that book. I did, at one point, I drove, this was late in 2024. I think I probably maybe had already announced my resignation by this point. I announced my resignation to the leaders in early September.
What was the reason you gave them?
Oh, they all knew it was exhaustion.
Okay.
I was spent. Everybody could see it. And frankly, there were things where I had dropped the ball on some things too. I just, I was trying to spin too many plates and some of them were dropping. And and they saw it, but they didn't ask me to. They, we had some talks. I tried to explain what was going on. And nobody, it wasn't just me who really didn't have any space for the possibility that I would resign. It just wasn't the plan, for anyone. But I don't think anybody realized how strung out I was, how, Bilbo tells Gandalf that he feels like butter scraped over too much bread. I got to throw in some Tolkien references, guys.
People are asking in the comments to talk about Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
So okay, so now
that's how I felt, and they saw that and they knew that. But so I told them. But what happened was, so Cammie and I were about ready to leave for Florida for a vacation at the end of August, and there was something that we became aware of and talked about it, and it was something that was definitely I was going to have to face when we got back from vacation. And it wasn't on the surface anything problematic. If you were looking from the outside, you wouldn't have thought anything about it. But it was something we were aware of, and it was something that struck us in a way where for the very first time, this was it. This was the moment. She said to me, maybe this is the exit ramp. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. You see that now too? And so we decided this vacation, we're going to spend a lot of time talking and praying and really discerning the will of the Lord. And is he calling us? Is this it? Is he calling me to resign? And we went down to Florida to the Gulf and spent a nice week down there, but we spent a lot of time talking about this too. And we ended up deciding. And when we came back, I resigned. So that was early September. Early October, we announced it to the congregation, and then on their request, because it was amicable, they asked if I would be willing to finish out the year, and I was, because I didn't have anything lined up anyway.
You throw any Catholicism in your sermons?
I did, but not really intentionally. I mean, no, I didn't. You know what? I'm going to say I didn't, and here's why. Because going back to 2023. This is a tangent. You want me to go down this road or not?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. In 2023, Advent of 2023. For Advent, I'm doing a sermon series just through Luke 1. And so I'm reading on, these passages. I've preached these before. I don't have my reading glasses on, so it's probably good that I can't see
Keith said you definitely preached a sermon about Mary.
Okay, that was Keith?
Keith, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So what happened was I'm supposed to just spend my whole time reading the comments, right?
Yes. Pull a Joshua Charles, please.
Keep your glasses off. We'd rather you not see them.
Yeah. It was Advent. And of course, I've gone through Luke 1 1,000 times, and I'm just like, what can I do that maybe brings this to life in a way that I haven't before? And so, of course, I've read by that time different things from the Catholic Catechism, but I'm looking at different reformers and what they said, and I'm just dumbfounded about how they can believe that Mary remained a virgin. How can you think that? And it wasn't that long before that a guy had asked me at church. It was funny. He just out of nowhere, he said, just literally out of nowhere. It was just this, the Catholics believe that Mary was a virgin the rest of her life after she gave birth to Jesus. I said, yep. He said, but we don't think that. I said, nope. Why not? I said, well, because the New Testament talks about his brothers. I gave the thing, I gave that answer. That was just what I thought. And so when I see that these reformers don't think that way, that she did remain a virgin, I was like, how in the world can they think that? So I started looking into that and discovered their reasons why, which, is just the ancient doctrine of why, and I was like, wow, that's really interesting. But I'm ecumenical enough. I'm not interested in fighting with every denomination. I'm interested, we can all look around the world and understand that Christians on whatever level we can need to stand together with what's going on. And that's where I'm at right now. And I'm just like, I don't like seeing the baby thrown out with the bathwater when there are differences. You don't have to jettison everything, just because it might smell a little Catholic or something like that. And so I just kind of dropped a phrase into this Advent sermon about how it seems that the best explanation for why Mary was surprised at what Gabriel said to her was that she had taken a vow of celibacy, and it was really not fair, to be honest, because I said that and then I just kind of moved on because that wasn't my main point. But boy, I got questions about that afterwards. And but honestly, some of them were really good. They were really open. Some of the people in the church, they were asking me, what about this? And I said, yeah, well, here's the thing. And that makes sense. And we just had good conversations. I had a couple that, I don't think really wanted to listen, but that didn't surprise me. And we just moved on. But what I would often do in the summertime, as people are coming and going and vacations and stuff like that, I would do a series through part of the summer where I would just take theological questions that people had or whatever, and I would build a sermon based on that. I would just answer those questions through the medium of a sermon. And so guess what the number one question I got was. And I had been getting that question too. It wasn't just then. So I decided to give a sermon in answer to these questions on the perpetual virginity of Mary. So that would be the one sermon that I gave. I think, I don't know how much of it was how much of it crept into other sermons. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Again, I'm bound confessionally. It's not like I was trying to be a rebel, but I gave that one, and it kind of, that's the one that Keith posted. That's why I think he's saying that, because he posted it on X. That one's actually on my YouTube channel. There's not much there, but that's there. So.
Even Catholics, I think, don't grasp what we're saying when we say she's a perpetual virgin. That means her hymen remained intact after giving birth. Like that, we're saying her virginity remained intact even through the birth. Like, it is very miraculous what Catholics believe. It's not just she didn't have sex. It's a very deep doctrine. So
it is. And I came across, I really didn't get that, even once we're in 2025 and we know that this is the direction we're going, I was still like, I don't know, that one just doesn't make sense to me. And it seems like people don't necessarily agree fully on that. So I don't know, do we have to? But then I read Brant Petrie on that. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that does make really, really good sense then. So.
Well, you can, like, for me, some of the things that I've come to even think deeper about, especially through doing this show, is like, look at the versions of Christianity that don't believe in the perpetual virginity of Mary versus the ones that do. So, like, if you have the Orthodox and the Catholics, look at the monastic life that gets born from the belief in the perpetual virginity. Like, you see virginity as something holy and sacred. So people take these vows of celibacy and to emulate Our Lady, and these monastic communities are born from it. And that's how we have the Bible written down through the ages, because these monks then transcribe the scriptures. They also transcribe all of the Greek myths, and all of ancient literature is transcribed in these monasteries because they believed in the perpetual virginity of Mary. If it was just Protestantism that got born from, if it was just the Bible, like, we wouldn't have a Bible. If it was just left to Protestants, the institution of the church itself is so miraculous because it gives birth to an entire civilization, and it's based in these monasteries that are writing down these books and passing these things down to the next generation. It's really amazing.
Yeah. So it was to your question about the sermons too. Yeah, absolutely. It's just one of those things where. To me, it's like, okay, here's something that we could embrace as Protestants, that the first Protestants did embrace. And yet it really, along the line, at some point, it gets jettisoned and people don't believe that anymore. And you see that on X and everywhere else online. It doesn't matter whether reformers believe that or not, they're wrong. And yeah, but there's good reasons for it. And so that's, that was a sermon. Others, again, there might have been other things in there, but on the timeline of things, in late August, early September, all we really decided was it's time to resign.
Mm-hmm.
After it was announced to the congregation in early October, we really started talking earnestly then about what's next, because that had been a live question for me for a while, because I saw a what's next on the horizon. But it needed to be together. It needed to be an us decision. I didn't want it to become I didn't want our marriage to be strained when really all of this trauma, all of this stuff that we were going through, that I was going through, it really brought the two of us closer.
Yeah.
One of the good things that happened through that is that our marriage really, really grew. It was through the crucible of that we grew much closer, and I didn't want to jeopardize that by, trying to
love is
ways.
forged in suffering, right? Like, so your wife sees that you're going through this internal torment, and man, you really see the value of the sacrament of marriage. It's like you two really do build each other up, and you lead each other towards heaven. So now this is October. You announced to the congregation. Do you guys go through OCIA, or do you how do you go about making the decision to become Catholic?
We're both voracious readers, and I had already been reading a lot. And she decided to look into some of these things for herself. And I think that one of the reasons why, I will give two reasons why she was willing to do that. The lesser reason is because she saw changes in me, and she couldn't give any other account for it other than the way that what I was reading and studying, the spirituality that I was looking into, was changing me. And so I think my life and how it changed me was the strongest apologetic that could have been offered to her.
It's the same thing for me and my wife.
Yeah.
I imagine, especially after a difficult time like you were going through.
Yeah. Well, yeah. With the COVID thing, it's like one day in the spring of 2020, I got angry about stuff at church, and I stayed angry for a year. It was exhausting.
Mm-hmm.
There was always something. There was always a fight. There was always a conflict. And so that was kind of how that went. And it was just, so yeah, that's the kind of thing I would do. But, a lot of the sharp edges kind of got chiseled off during that time and smoothed out, and just in our relationship too. And so that was one thing. I think that was one thing that made her willing to look into something that she didn't want to be interested in at all.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing was by the time her mother is in hospice care, I'm far enough in my thinking where, I'm becoming comfortable with different things. I've become convinced largely by Hebrews 12 and the comparison there of, you've not come to a mountain flaming with fire, Sinai, but you have come to Mount Zion, to the heavenly Jerusalem, to the Father, to the angels, to the this, to the that, to the spirits of the righteous made perfect. And it's like, okay, so he's saying that by virtue of being in Christ and worship, we are in the presence of the Father and the Son and the angels and the Old Testament saints and the New Testament saints, the spirits of the righteous made perfect.
Yeah, he writes that in the present. Like you are now in it. He's not talking about some future event. He's writing it that you're in the present.
Yeah, and really all of this stuff, it really was the case that I was going to have to be convinced by Scripture. It's just how I was wired.
Mm-hmm.
And I began to get convinced of certain things. And I could become convinced of one thing and say, well, I can be convinced of this. There's no way I'm going to be Catholic, but I'm convinced of at least this. And those things, those dominoes gradually fell. And by the time her mother was in hospice care, and she didn't go into end of life care right away, but at this point, I'm seeing what it's doing to her. She's a very faithful daughter, visiting her mom all the time, and, with dementia, you lose your your parent twice kind of a thing. She's going through that.
Yeah.
You know, it's tearing me up to see her going through that. And I just started praying, Mary, please be a mother to my wife while she's losing her earthly mother. And I think she got involved. And
beautiful prayer.
Yeah. And I think that, and I'm starting to get broken up a little bit, but I think that was a big part of why she became willing to look at what I had been looking at. And it wasn't until, you know, again, after the announcement, because I really didn't understand where she was. She didn't tell me. I found out one time down the road, I said, we're talking. It's like, how are we even having this conversation? And she's like, well, it's possible that I have my own stash of books that you just don't know about, you know? So she's reading stuff. I don't know what's even going on in her life. But, you know, when we really, really, really can finally talk openly about this after we know I have resigned, I've announced it anyway, and we start to have the question of what's next, it was kind of one of my great delights to find out that this was a live possibility for her. Yeah. So we started talking about it. And I'm not going to tell you that it was like, boom, we're in. There were all kinds of, you know, honestly, even up to the weekend of Easter Vigil, we had these check-in moments, you know, are we really doing this?
Yeah.
You know, and it's not out of doubt, but it's just such a radical thing, you know.
Did the church scandals come into play at all for you, or are you just
yes and no. Well, scandals, there's a lot I wasn't aware of.
I just mean like, well, because it's very contentious in the Catholic Church right now. You have Catholics criticizing the Pope, and you know, there's a lot of confusion coming out. So, like, did that have a factor in you, like, any of the resistance, or did you kind of just say, all right, all families are messy?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of like that, but you know, again, because when you study your way into the Catholic Church, some of that culture stuff that's going on, it's like, it's not that it doesn't matter, but it's not part of what's driving you to make a decision or come to a conclusion. So if you come to, so here's me on the Pope, Isaiah 22, the steward, okay, Shebna, Eliakim, keys of the house of David, and all of that, the typology and the prefigurement of Jesus
Matthew
and Peter.
16.
Yes. As soon as I see that and see those connections, because I've been into typology for years, long before I ever even looked at the Catholic Church.
Really?
It's my jam, you know.
I didn't know that. So that, oh man, you must have been in your wheelhouse once you started seeing all the connections.
Oh yeah, 100%. And it's kind of like, you know, I've said before, because Scripture was so central, it almost had to be that way. And it was when it all started going, and looking back on it, to me, it's kind of like, and this would be, you know, Bergsma has a book called Stunned by Scripture, How the Bible Made Me Catholic. I totally get what he means by that title and subtitle. Now, I wasn't aware it was doing that to me for a long time, you know, but seeing those things, seeing those connections and the richness of it, I was primed for that, because that's the kind of thing I liked to do. My favorite things to do in sermons were to tie in old and new and show patterns and fulfillment. That's what I almost always tried to do. So I was just ready to see that. But once you see that, and once you say, okay, this is what Jesus is doing with Peter, that's an office being established. At that point, it doesn't matter whether there's problems with a particular pope or not. It's just Jesus established the office.
So many modern evangelicals are missing out on, it's like they're missing out on so many prophecies that are fulfilled just by the pattern being fulfilled. Like the pattern is laid out in the old and then fulfilled in the new. They're missing out on the whole point of Scripture. It's like, it's sad when you see, I'm definitely like talking very specifically about American evangelicalism, where they take 5 or 6 verses out of the epistles and form an entire theology on them, and kind of like write off everything else, and just kind of, you know, it's like the things that are hard to understand, they'll go, well, that's just difficult to understand. The things that are easy to understand are the things that you just know. And it's just, they're missing out on so much by not seeing the whole way God fills fulfills it throughout the entire story. So
yeah. Yeah, and it's viewed as a stretch. If you see those patterns sometimes, it's like, that's not a stretch. It's obvious, that's what's going on there. I would kind of half joke, half not joke that my hermeneutic for approaching scriptures and preaching was when Jesus says, you search the scriptures because you think in them you have eternal life, but these are the scriptures that speak of me. And so to me, if you're in if Jesus is calling the Hebrew scriptures the scriptures there. So if you're in the Old Testament and you're not looking for how they point ahead to Jesus and the church and the new covenant, you're not doing it right.
Can you imagine the conversation on the road to Emmaus? With Christ talking to the apostles and just showing them all of the fulfillments from the Old Testament. Like their hearts must have been like ready to explode.
It's one reason why I love the Dewey Reams so much, is that in the Old Testament, anytime they would use anointed or anointed one, Dewey Reams translates it as Christ, so that you see the word Christ over and over and over in the Old Testament.
That's pretty.
I didn't know that. I've not read that version, so I'm pretty much completely unfamiliar with that translation.
So now we saw the story the other day that there were 17 Protestants that got brought into the church just recently. Now, what role did you play in their conversions? How did that were these people that went to your congregation?
Yeah, these are some of my closest friends. So our closest friends. And they all had been at my previous church. Yes. So when I resigned, it was official, the announcement anyway, and we started having these conversations. We knew it didn't matter. It didn't matter where we decided to go. I knew, number one, I knew at least to start, we were not going to go anywhere in my hometown because we're both too, it's not like everybody knows us, but people know us here.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be a distraction. And I want to be able to just walk into a church and worship. And I love the people at my former church.
Well, I got news for you. You just came on the biggest Catholic show in the world, so you're going to be recognized at church now. I got news for you.
Oh, I didn't come on Keith's channel yet.
I'll tell you right now. I very rarely get recognized at Mass, except for now the people that I know because we're in the same parish together. You don't have to worry about that.
You guys have taken off, really. It's been really fun to watch you guys grow the way you have. I think you had 5,000 followers when I first found you. Maybe not.
It is interesting to watch kind of how we're getting asked to go speak at things now, and I think people are starting to pay attention a little bit. It's like there's. Yeah, I don't know. It's the burden of that is also kind of weighing on me now. So I've been talking to Rob a little bit about it. It's like, when you got 5,000 followers, you can kind of shoot off the mouth.
You can say whatever you want.
Now we're getting a little bit bigger. It's like I have to probably weigh what I'm saying a little bit. And
yeah, you're totally restrained now. That's
so. Okay, so now
I forgot what I was saying. What was I just talking about?
Well, the 17 people you brought in,
what church?
How does that?
Okay.
Did they see your conversion and then start asking you questions? How is that interaction?
Yeah. So my wife and I knew even if we had determined for sure, where are we going to go to church? We knew it would be out of town, and we knew that it was not going to be in the denomination that I had been a part of. Because if I show up there, everybody knows me too, and they're going to want me to preach. And I don't want to. I want to be able to wake up on Sunday and just go to church and have no responsibilities. That's what I needed at that point. So we know we're going to go out of town somewhere. Where are we going to go? Are we on the same page? And so we just wouldn't talk about it. Excuse me. We got a few questions between October and the end of the year. And we didn't have a solid answer for sure. We had inclinations, but I don't think we had a solid answer. And so we would just say, we know it won't be in town. We don't want to cause a disturbance. And we really want to give our former church a cushion of time before they have to start dealing with, hey, they're going to this church down the road or that church down the road. Because
this is our former pastor who looked out for our souls for 10 years.
Yeah.
And
it wasn't easy for any of us. It wasn't easy for any of us. And it was a really nice send off. And I wanted to really kind of nurture those relationships and not cause undue strife or sorrow or hardship, because it's not easy to look for a new pastor. No one wants to be in that situation. I mean, if you liked your pastor, I guess. But So I just wanted to kind of honor them in that way too. And so that was kind of our mindset. But after the new year, by the time the new year comes around, and now we got to make a decision. What are we going to do? Because it's not like we're not going to go to church somewhere.
Yeah.
And so we stuck with the out of town plan. We were driving about an hour and 20 minutes to go over to Cedar Rapids, the priest that I'd been introduced to years before. And we ended up splitting our time a little bit with another city, Des Moines, which was a little closer to us, and going different places there. But we did come to a point where we were really praying and talking and checking in with each other. Do we feel like we are free to even say what we're doing right now when people ask us? Because and none of it is out of, embarrassment or anything like that, but it's out of really wanting to continue to honor them and not cause,
divisions,
just not cause division and confusion and strife. And we didn't want to hurt anybody,
Right.
And, but we felt like, okay, here's the thing. I guess our fleece was this. If someone asks us, because now we'd gone through a time where nobody was asking us for a while. And I don't know exactly why, but it was fine. It was actually good for us to have that time of not having to answer that question. But after the new year, shortly after the new year, I think we decided, okay, we feel like God is telling us it's okay now. But we weren't going to be out all, hey, everybody, guess what? Because that's going to cause trouble. And so when
you're such a Midwesterner, it's so funny.
I know, 100%. I get that. But, it's so weird. I think it's good. I know what our intentions were. I've said, are there things that we could have done better? The answer is yes. It has to be yes. But is there anything I would have done differently? I'm not sure there was, because I know what my motives were. My motives were to not hurt people that I had been caring for 15 years. But when questions started coming, we decided we would go ahead and answer. And
you weren't going to gaslight. So you won't lie if somebody asks you, but you're not going to go out of your way to cause any damage by doing it on your own.
Yeah, we didn't want to make a big thing out of it. We wanted to just quietly go the route we wanted to go and not cause a bunch of trouble for people, and certainly not for my former church. So when friends would ask, we would tell them. And, objections, questions, what about? And some of the conversations were not pleasant. There were some, I'm not sure I had many that were that way. I know she did. I don't know, maybe I've blocked that or something, but there were questions, there were objections, but we gave our reasons, and, people would process it in different ways. And in every case, well, as they started to look through it, I'm talking about these 17 now. In the 17, by the way, it's really 4 couples and a bunch of kids is who that is. So they would process our answers. They'd look at different stuff. They might come back with more objections and that, but over time, we just kind of said that this is the thing. We'll talk to you guys about anything you want to know. We weren't actively trying to, hey, you got to
evangelize them and bring them into the church.
No, because I didn't want to hurt the church. That's not what I wanted to do. But the thing is, the Holy Spirit moved, and honestly, lest it seem as though, it's all about how persuasive we were. I think in every case, there were already things going on, just as there were in our story. There was already groundwork being laid in different ways for all of these different couples. We only learned that as we talked a little bit more. But in the end, we kind of saw that there was an interest. At least there was a softening of the view toward, and no one was really I don't think anybody was super anti-Catholic. In fact, I know they weren't, and I wasn't that kind of
because that's not always the case, right? So they didn't have a ton of bias against Catholics to start off.
Yeah,
then.
And I wasn't that kind of a pastor either. By the time I became a pastor, I was out of my cage stage, and I was out of my I wasn't really an anti-Catholic. I had been, but I wasn't anymore. So that's not what they got from me from the pulpit. So, we had our conversations. We kind of thought it was possible, but there were things going on in their lives that we didn't even really know about. And individually, this couple had this thing going on. This couple had that thing going on. And it was around Easter this year that all of a sudden dominoes just started falling. And so they, not all at the same time, but they all made the same decision, independently of one another, but all kind of right around the same time too. With one couple maybe a little bit later, but they all started OCIA at the same time. They all ended up leaving my old church, coming to the Catholic Church in my hometown. And when that happened, when that went down, that's when we decided we would start.
Then you felt comfortable going to the one in your hometown. Now,
because of that, the cat's out of the bag. At that point. Now at this point, it doesn't matter.
Not just that. Have you guys struck up a spiritual kinship with these other families now that you guys have? Because look, you guys are in the Midwest. Not that many Catholics everywhere, right? It's a small town. It's probably mainly Protestant.
Oh yeah, it's mainly Protestant. I mean, we were already really, really, really good friends anyway. This has only added, a layer to that. It's a great layer, but yeah, we just have another thing in common right now, which is it's a phenomenal thing to have in common.
Mm-hmm.
But so they went through OCIA together, and so we sponsored. I sponsored 2 of the men and 2 children, so 4 total. She sponsored 2 of the women and 1 child, and then others 17 people. That number is, there was 1 child who was a little too young to be confirmed, but he came into the church with his parents.
Right,
so I'm counting, he's number 17. But 2 of the men who were standing behind, if you've seen that video that got posted on X, 2 of them that are standing behind as sponsors, they actually reverted in this process.
So they were cradle Catholics and they reverted.
So the number is actually 19. Really. But they reverted and then they sponsored their wives, which is really cool. And and there were a few other sponsors mixed in, their family members and stuff. But yeah, it is
amazing when you see how God's grace works, man. It's especially if you're caught up in the tedious politics of what's happening in the church and stuff. But when it comes down to it, you fall in love with the Catholic faith, God just captures your heart, and you just need the sacraments, and he just draws people to him constantly, regardless of what we think is happening all around us. It's God's spirit really is always moving and pulling people towards his church.
Yeah, that was our experience. We weren't looking for this, but troublemakers like you guys probably have.
How old are your children, Aaron?
I have 6, and my oldest is almost 29, and my youngest is 17.
Okay, so now they're all adults at this point, so you can't drag them in. So have you spoken to them about this? Because this is a pretty rapid thing that happened. I mean, You were a year and a half ago, you were a Protestant pastor, and now you and your wife come into the church. How have the conversations with your kids been going?
For the most part, good. It hasn't been all smooth, but by the time, in all of this, three of them aren't even at home anymore. They're off in their own careers. And the 3 that are home, different circumstances, but they're all working. My youngest is in school still, even though he's technically a minor. We couldn't just say, here's the deal, this is what you're doing. But the youngest 2 came with us.
Wow.
We gave them, we talked about it. Here's what we're doing and here's why. And yeah, it's weird when you're a Protestant doing this. It's even weirder when you're a Protestant pastor, or you were anyway, and you're doing this. But we just talked about it, and the youngest 2 came in with us at the Easter Vigil. The other 4, they're at different places.
They're just adults.
Yeah, they're just different places. Although my oldest, I actually talked to him. And I asked him, I thought something like this might come up. If it does, and he said, yeah, I don't care. It's fine. You can say it. So my oldest is going to start OCIA at
oh my goodness. That's amazing.
Where he is, he lives in a different city, and he's going to a parish over there, and he's going to start there. And I also have permission to say that Cammie's brother and his wife have just started OCIA, and she's reverting. And so there's a lot going on, and there's still other conversations I've had too. So,
Aaron, you are going to. All right. So now the thing I do want to talk to you about is that instinct to like kind of stay out of the spotlight. When you first left that church and like kind of like go away, like, because basically you go from being a professional Christian, like as a pastor, right? You're a professional Christian. So I think like most pastors that become Catholic have to then face the question, do I want to be a professional Catholic? That could mean being an author or preaching or just teaching the Catholic faith, because the desire is there for every Protestant who converts. Like their heart's on fire. You're like, you could do the preaching thing. You're pretty good. You might be a good writer. So you do have to wrestle with, do you want to become a professional Catholic? I mean, Keith Nestor did it. I've heard, like, because I used to watch The Journey Home every week when Marcus Grodi was doing it. And it's like, you see all these Protestant pastors then come in and just choose to be a professional Catholic at that point. Like, have you wrestled with that idea at all? Like, what are you doing for work now? What's your plan?
Yeah, I did wrestle with it. For work, nothing currently. We knew that we both wanted me to take 3 months and do nothing and just breathe again, and just kind of be a couple again and try to come out of the turmoil together. And that was good. But 3 months became 6 months and I started getting really antsy in there. And I looked at different things. I'd done a couple of interviews. I really started getting like, I got to get something. This is just not right. I need to do something. And we're living on savings. There's only money going out right now. But again, Midwest, cost of living isn't that high here. We're okay for a while. This is a decision we made that we didn't plan on depleting savings, but it's a decision we made that we're willing to, if waiting on the Lord means that's what we're going to do. So that's what I've been doing. And early on, because I know all the things you're saying, I'm aware of that. And to some degree, yeah, there's the draw of, who will want to talk to me?
I wanted to,
but this is early on, and I detected this in myself, and I was like, no, that is not at all the thing. And so I remember,
look, it is a lucrative thing to go from being a Protestant to a Catholic if then you get into Catholic media of some kind. So
yeah,
well, the temptation's there, and I wouldn't blame you for doing it. Most of the Catholic apologists you see are converts.
Yeah.
And it's because they had that deep love for Christ. They have a deep love for Scripture. And then when the pieces connect, it's like they just have to tell everybody about it because they're on fire. It really is like a Pentecost that happens to them.
The dangerous thing about that is that if that's what you want before you're Catholic, then you run the risk of becoming Catholic for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
I didn't become Catholic for a vocation, for work, So that's a thing to be aware of. And I became aware that my mind started going in that direction. I just stopped. And I remember praying to the Lord. I was getting ready one day for whatever, getting ready for the day. And I remember just praying, God, I am ready to be nobody.
Yeah.
You lead me in the way I need to go, but I'm fine being nobody. I'm fine not being important, and because when you're a pastor, it's not like it's a prideful thing, but you're important in a lot of ways. But those ways were exhausting me. And so I was fine not being that anymore. But I knew I wanted time. Rob, you've posted things before, and you're right, where someone will say something and given their whole big diatribe, and you'll be like, you've been Catholic for 6.5 minutes. Maybe just take a back seat for a little bit.
Yeah, I'll definitely.
That is so true, though.
I'll definitely say, like, stay out of church politics, like, stay out of liturgical debates when you first come into church. Just be Catholic. Yeah. Just soak in being Catholic. Learn the culture, because there's something so beautiful about being Catholic, and you need to experience it for a period of time before you, because you definitely have an in-depth understanding of Scripture and typology that you can share with people. So there is a value in that. But like you said, I think it's good for a convert to come. I'm not telling you what to do, but I do think it's good for a convert to come in and just be Catholic for a little bit and experience it. And that's why Keith wrote that book, right? He wrote the book on the Catholic. What was the book he wrote? Like once you become
Convert's
Catholic,
Guide.
now what? Yeah,
Convert's
Convert's
Guide.
Guide, right? Like,
Yeah.
because it is kind of weird when you come in. It's like bizarre. We got like, you know, feast days, and we got like devotionals. And
Well,
have you and your wife fallen in love with a particular saint yet, or you haven't gotten that deep yet? Have you gotten into the Pokemon cards of Catholicism yet?
I hate it that I know what you're talking about there.
You are online way too much.
Well, except is he talking about Fuentes or Carlos?
Fuentes, yeah. Fuentes called devotionals like a Pokemon card.
You know, it's a lot. My goodness, it's a lot, and it can be overwhelming. Yes, there are saints that have been their stories have been particularly meaningful, and you know, my wife's confirmation saint was Saint Monica, and you know, praying for her son, and you know, her heart for heart for our children, her heart for other people's children. Saint Francis de Sales was mine.
The only saint that's absolutely necessary for a Catholic is Our Lady, right? Like she is absolutely necessary. Like you need to have a relationship with Our Lady. I'm not saying like, I don't care if it's in doctrine or whatever. I'm not going to argue with Jimmy Akin's position. I'm telling you, if you're a Catholic, you need to have a deep relationship with Our Lady, because she will save you at the most difficult periods of your life. Like she will be there to save you in those periods. So even if you don't go that deep into different saints and stuff, just I would say, especially as a new Catholic, just develop that devotion to Our Lady, and she'll lead you where she's going to lead you. But like we did a show on the what the heck did we do the other day with Ryan Grant? Lepanto, and I learned about Saint Pope Pius V, and I never really read about Saint Pope Pius V, but like I fell in love with him when I started. Like he was so courageous and brave, and that's kind of how you come across the saints. It's like you don't have to force them down your throat. Like something will happen. It'll be like a saint's feast day, and you'll go, "Oh, let me read into that saint a little bit," and you'll just develop a kinship with them, and you'll ask for their intercession here and there, you know, and then all of a sudden you fall in love with them. And that's I think it's such an important part of being Catholic, is that God wants us to love our older siblings. He wants us to really understand that we are the communion of saints. So he will grant you little favors when you fall in love with an older sibling, to let you know that connection is very real. Like my mom has such a deep connection to Saint Therese, the little flower.
Therese.
Saint Therese, the little flower. And whenever my mom prays a novena to her, she gets roses at the end of the novena, like every time. So, I mean, I know people that have done that and they don't get roses. My mom gets roses every time. So it's just something that'll kind of naturally happen, I think. But
yeah,
1-800-Flowers must love your mom.
Yeah, when you study your way in, you know, it's one that you can come in and know a lot of doctrines and know a lot of arguments and stuff like that. But boy, there's a culture that is just, it's a different language. It's a different culture. It's like being uprooted in a different continent, with different customs and different ways of doing things. So it takes time, and it's a process. You're absolutely right about that. There are some things maybe in the hopper for me, through different conversations I had with different people. I started getting the idea for a book, and I set it aside. I kept pushing it back because I feel like I need to stay in my lane. I'm not, on some degree, I have some expertise in what I was as a pastor. Yeah. I don't have expertise in Catholic theology. I just don't. I read a lot of stuff. Maybe I know a lot of stuff, but that doesn't make me an expert. But the direction that it was going was people wanting to be able to have conversations with Protestant friends and family the way that I sometimes do, what about these connections? Which ones? What is it again for Matthew 16? What's that? And so I thought, well, that I can do. I can think like a Protestant. I know how Protestants think, and I know what tends to be persuasive from the scriptures. Not for everybody. It's not a silver bullet.
Right.
The Holy Spirit has to be at work for sure. But so I started working on, I'll just call it a manuscript because it feels presumptuous to call it a book. But I have it almost done. I've had a bunch of people read it. It's been really good feedback. The last one I need to hear from is a priest who's my spiritual director. And I meet with him next week. And if he gives me the doctrinal green light, then I guess I have to make a decision.
Well,
do I want to try to self-publish?
if you are going to put a book out, you let us know. You will come on. We will help promote that book. We will help you sell it. Like, especially because you're in this interim where you don't know what you're doing with your career and you're not working right now. Like, we're going to be there to assist you. Like, we're going to be a family to our brother, and we will. If you need us to set, like, we'll talk privately. But if you need me to set something up to help you guys get through until you figure things out, we'll help you.
Well,
out.
that and like I have the email for the president of TAN. If you
Well, that's
need
the
help
thing. You're
publishing.
in a very fortunate position where you do know, like, a lot of professional Catholics who know a lot of people.
No, whoa. Keith is the professional, not us.
Yeah. I'm not talking about us. I'm talking about Keith.
Yeah.
All right. We do have to get off because we have another show. We're all right. So Rob and I are going to be on the rundown in about 15 minutes. I told him we'd be there at 9:45. So we do have to wrap this up. But man, I could start jumping into like Catholicism right now. So Aaron, maybe we'll get you back on post-conversion. We won't talk about your conversion. We'll just talk about Catholicism. And maybe we'll get Keith on too. We'll talk, the three of us,
Yeah, that would
the
be
four
cool.
of us will get on, and
That'd
we'll
be
just
great.
have a conversation with the four of us, and we'll just talk Catholicism.
Is there anything you have to promote? And if not, is there any prayer requests you'd like everyone to pray for?
You know, let me start with the prayer request briefly. A big verse for, here's my Protestant thing. You have a verse that's a big deal, and you kind of go back to Exodus 14:14. The Lord will fight for you. You need only be still. When Israel's at the Red Sea, huge verse in our story, in the whole process of our story. When I was feeling antsy about work, I prayed, Lord, I need you to, if the silence in the waiting is the answer, and I just need to go do something, then I'm dumb enough that you need to tell me that. I need to know if I'm just supposed to go do something or if I'm still supposed to wait. I don't look at the mass readings beforehand. We went to daily mass the next morning, and the first reading is from Exodus 14. And I look over at her.
God does that, right?
Yeah, and it's like, and yet it culminates. It goes one verse past that, but yeah, right up to that. The Lord will fight for you. You need only be still. So, just the prayer is, we are 100% confident that that's what God is doing right now. He has us waiting. He gives us something to do, and he gives us just enough to say, here's the next thing. Mm-hmm. But we don't see a lot further than that. And that's part of the training that he's giving us, I think. And so honestly, just pray that we will continue to discern his will and not try to run ahead of what he wants to do. Because I'm very A-type. She's very A-type. We want to take control and take charge and do things. Yeah. And that's just not what we're supposed to do right now. And
trusting in God's providence is one of the hardest parts of being a Catholic. You just kind of have to accept his will and trust that he has your holiness, like your sanctification in mind when he's doing things. So
the other thing, to answer that part of your question, I did start a Substack, which gradually will tell some of this story in different ways. It's just my name, or the @ is Aaron Gorn, or my
Is
name.
it linked to your Twitter?
I don't know. I don't remember. I don't know.
Put your Substack in your Twitter handle, and I'll retweet that. And do you have a link to it, Rob?
I have the link right here.
That's right. I did not do that. I know that I need to do that. But
come on, I got to teach you guys how to do social media. You guys have got it.
I don't know anything.
We'll talk off air, but I will help you with anything that I can if you're going to start doing anything like this. So guys, go subscribe to Aaron's Substack. Me and Rob will talk off air. We may put a little something together for Aaron to help him get through this little interregnum period while he's up in the air about where he's going. But Aaron, I've enjoyed my interactions with you for 2 years now. Like, genuinely, you and I are friends. Like, we've exchanged numbers.
Mutual. It's very mutual.
We exchanged numbers way before you became Catholic, and
you sent me a DVD.
Yes. Why did you play Catholic trivia?
Well, I did, and I sucked at it. But you still gave me the prize anyway. It was
so funny. Aaron's been around since trivia days. That's so funny, man.
Well, no. I don't think it was when you happened to bring one back. But it's still a long time ago. It was still a long time ago. But you said, well, I want to send Aaron this DVD, so that it goes back to at least that point.
Keith, if you're open to that, maybe we'll get the 4 of us together. And I said 3 because there's 3 people on screen, and I'm tired, guys.
No, he was excluding me.
It wasn't
everyone.
excluding.
We
Rob
all know that.
I'm not on if Rob's not on.
We'll now that we're past the conversion story, I'd like to get both of you on, and we'll just talk about what it's like to be Catholic, and we'll have a fun episode. So all right, guys, we're gonna fly. Go subscribe to Aaron's Substack.
Yep.
And anybody that wants to continue the conversation with Rob and I, we're going over to
I
the
pinned the
rundown.
link in the live chat.
Rob put the link up.
Thank you so much,
Aaron,
guys.
Thank you so much for coming on with us tonight. I'm sorry because I could have talked to you for another hour and a half.
It's all right. It's all right.
We'll set up another show. Aaron, welcome home. I know that's the cliche thing to say, but you are now part of the most dysfunctional family in history, and we are glad to have you as a brother.
The feeling is mutual. Love you guys.
Love you too,
Thanks,
man.
Aaron.
All right, take us out, Rob.
See ya.